So today we're talking about content. Is batching content the way to go? What if we batch content? Can people tell we're doing it? Does it make you annoying? Does it make you boring? Or probably the most important question of all when it comes to content is why do we scroll past stuff in our feed? What makes us do that? Because if it makes us do that, it makes other people do that too. Have you ever stopped to wonder why we ignore content, especially from creators who we actually like? Well, usually it's because there's just something missing. We can't quite put our finger on it, but it makes the content less enjoyable, less fun to watch or read. This is a hallmark symptom of someone who's created content in a batch. They batch their content. But you say, Pat, experts say to batch our content, right? That's how we're meant to be able to make content. We do it in batches. Well, there's something those experts have left out, and it's crucial. Otherwise, you just end up being boring. So let me tell you why this happens, how to fix it, and how to batch your content properly so you can build an audience who loves you and wants to buy your stuff. When Instagram started, I had this food account. Anyway, I moved to New York and the account blew up. There was this small group of us in New York City riding that first wave of foodie influencers. It was pretty fun. The problem was, if you remember back then, Instagram, you couldn't schedule, you couldn't plan, you couldn't switch accounts very easily. You had to log out and log in again. It was not very good at all. So time was an issue and I thought batching content was the way forward. That's what I'd always done with content in the past. It had worked. I thought it had worked. That's what everybody was doing. So for a while, I did that too with my food account. However, I started noticing a problem. Engagement dropped. It didn't tank, but it just dropped. I was no longer experiencing spikes. Things wouldn't quite go as viral. It just seemed to be normal. And I realized that people could tell that the content was batched. They may not have known that's what the reason was, but it just wasn't as good. So why? What makes batched content not as good? Well, I didn't have time to figure it out back then, but I've had a lot of time since then and I've had many clients. And it's one thing that I'm very specific with about clients. So I'm sharing this with you now and hopefully it can save you all that heartache. So the big reason why batching content sucks the life out of your feed and neutralizes your engagement, it all comes down to feedback. Tell me, have you ever tried to close your eyes while you're driving? Have you ever tried to sing in a microphone when the music's too loud? Remember that game, Pin the Tail on the Donkey? Well, you need your eyes for feedback to know where you're pinning the tail. This feedback we get can be the difference between success and failure. Have a think about it. We all know someone who's maybe telling a joke or they're giving a speech, and if they can't read the room, if they can't get the feedback from the room, those feedback signs that people are giving, they're going to make an ass out of themselves. So let's talk content. Now, when you batch content, you're effectively disregarding all those feedback mechanisms. So you don't know whether your content's good or bad. Case in point, if you batch all your content for the month on the last day of the last month and you spend the entire month putting your content out, you won't know until the month is finished whether or not your content is good or not. And what happens is we have this sunk cost fallacy. So what we do is we think, well, we've made the content, we should probably just use it. So we go ahead and we use the content, even though it's not that good, even though it's not getting the best results. And so you end up one of those people who's got quantity of content, but not quality of content. And that's not good. Not if you want to charge premium prices for your services or whatever it is you're growing your audience for. And I can hear you now, but Pat, how am I meant to make all this content if I can't batch? I'm a busy person. Well, friend, you've come to the right place. I'm going to give you a framework so that you can still batch, but also still get the feedback from the market that you need. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask ourselves, are we just going to post or are we going to ascend the creative ladder? Have a look at this ladder, see where you're at. Everyone starts somewhere. This is the bottom rung. How do you know if you're at the bottom rung? Well, take a look at your engagement, and if your engagement is below average, not very good, then maybe you're sitting at the bottom rung. And that's okay. Everyone starts somewhere. So when you're at this stage, you don't know enough about your audience, and the evidence is in your engagement numbers. Now, this doesn't mean that what you have to say isn't good. It just means that the audience doesn't really care about the way you're presenting it, or the language you're using, or the format, etc. You need the feedback from the market so you can learn those small little nuanced things and get your message across clearly. And when you do, engagement will start to lift. Now you're into the middle rungs. How do you know you're in the middle rungs? Well, because engagement is average to good. You may have even had some semi-viral moments here and there. So when you're at this level, you can kind of feel it and it starts getting exciting. Now, while you're getting better at this, you can't quite predict yet when something is going to work. But you're starting to get a damn good idea. At this stage, you've had some content pop off and now you're addicted to trying to replicate it. This is a stage where you really learn to listen to what the audience is telling you. This is also the stage that many people, they don't persist. They drop off and they just go back to the bottom rung, or they just claim that it's all too hard. But for those of you, maybe that's you, who stick around and keep at it, you're going to start reaching the top rungs. And you know when you're reaching the top rungs because your engagement is almost always good, and sometimes it's great. Now you kind of expect that on a regular basis, you're going to start doing some hits with your content. When you're in this stage, you likely have a list of stuff that you know is interesting to your audience. You've taken notes, you've doubled down on content that you know works, you know your pains of your audience, you know your pleasures of your audience. In fact, you've got lots of ideas of things you can do, and you probably feel like you can't make content fast enough, and most of the stuff that you put out gets well received. You are tuned into your audience, not just aware of their voice, but you are hyper tuned into it. Now, listen in here. Your content choices start to follow the clicks. If you're not at this rung yet and you want to know what that looks like, take a look at the leaders in your niche. People who are really good, who you look up to in your business niche or in your audience niche. Who are those people and what does their content look like? Okay, now we've reached the very top. Now you're content fluent. Your engagement is great to excellent to amazing. At this level, you're no longer looking, trying, or chasing. You're setting the standard. Other people are copying you and you influence the larger narrative. When you're at this stage, you're regarded as one of the top influencers in your niche. So take a look. What stage are you at? How far up the content ladder are you? Let me know in the comments so I can create some better content for what you need right now to help you move further up the ladder. Now, before when I said that when we batch content, we fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. If you keep posting that kind of content, stuff you know is not quite right, it will degrade your brand. So my recommendation is this: take that content and stick it on the shelf. You can always use it if you need to, and make a commitment to yourself that what I'm going to do from now on is be very selective with what part of the content process you batch, and then allow yourself the freedom to be able to post as is needed. So when can you batch your content? Well, when you're at the stage where you know your market very, very well, you can probably go ahead and batch everything. That's not a problem at all because you know your audience really, really well. But in the beginning stage, in the early stage, at the bottom of the content ladder, when you're down those lower rungs, don't batch. It's just going to make you look like you don't really understand the industry that you're in, the problems of the avatar, and the desires of your ideal client. Now, I've given you a framework on how to scale back what you're batching, but I haven't told you exactly how and what to batch. So let me just give you a few tips. If you're posting on Instagram, still pictures. You can do all your still pictures at the same time. That's not a problem at all. But don't do all your copy at the same time. Do your copy as you're doing it so you can feel the emotion while you're putting the post together. If you're really not good at putting copy together, then just do it a day beforehand. Write it in your notes, and then when you go to post it the next day, you'll quickly review it, you'll scan through, and you'll be able to edit on the fly. That's all you really need to do. If you're making short form videos, don't make any more than say 2 or 3 short form videos at a time. I understand these take a little bit more time to process, so you can batch the creation of say 2 or 3, especially if you're posting every day or every second day. That's okay. But when it comes time to put your captions or overlaid text, do that stuff at the last minute. You never know. Something might happen in the news and you can pick up on it that day and you can mention it, or some kind of pop culture reference could be made and you can mention it on the fly in that day's piece of content that you might have batched on the weekend. So you'll be able to do the hard work early, but still give this fresh overlay so people watching know that, yeah, there's a real person involved. It's not just all done in a machine and pumped out to them. What about if you're writing email? Well, if you're writing email, then here's my recommendation. Have 1 or 2 pieces per week that you do that you make really good. That could be your weekly newsletter. Speaking of newsletter, are you subscribed to mine? The link is in this description. It's the first link. Click it, sign up. It's my newsletter. It's called Coach Marketing Sucks. I'm pretty proud of it. I think you'll like it. So have 1 thing per week that you work on. Take your time. Communicate with your audience the best you can. Give it a draft. Take a day. Don't write all 4 for the month in one day though. Do it 1 week at a time. That being said, if you're also sending email, daily email or every second day or only weekdays, do that stuff 1 day prior. Don't batch it all out. You're going to miss nuances in what's happening in pop culture, what's happening in the news, or what's happening from feedback you're getting from people when they respond to your emails, or when they comment on your posts or comment on your other social media. You need to have that immediacy to be able to say, yesterday, someone commented on my Facebook post, for example, about this thing. and you can talk about it immediately. That's the kind of interaction with the audience that money can't buy and batching content can't buy. That's what sets you apart and gets you climbing that content ladder. Now, if you're making YouTube videos like this one here, for example, and you're doing, say, one a week or one every 2 weeks, these take a bit more time to put together. And all I would say is this: give yourself a content schedule that allows you to hear feedback from the market and respond in your very next video. If you don't have any of that and you say, Pat, I just need to put out 4 videos a month and I only have 1 day to record them all, go ahead and do it. That's okay. But at least in other areas of content that you're using, whether on social media, on Facebook or LinkedIn, wherever else you're communicating, then in those areas, be immediate, be personable. Communicate like you would with anybody else. Remember, batching content is something you do as a mechanism to try and get more stuff done. Just don't let the desire for you to have more quantity of content take away the quality of your content. Because with quality comes a higher level of expectation, comes a better quality prospect. And if your offering is highly priced and you want to work with good quality people, make sure you've got the quality. Don't sacrifice it for quantity. I'll see you in the next video.